Hey everyone. Um, Hope you're all having a great day today. Now I know the Jets are still making off-season moves as we speak, but I figured I'd get this off my chest. I know there are a lot of Jet fans out there that were disappointed when the Jets brought back their former second-round pick from 2013 in Geno Smith. Now, what I will say is this. Yes, Geno Smith led the league in interceptions last year, which is 100% true. But at the same time, he put up more touchdowns than any of our quarterbacks combined. Our quarterbacks combined for 15 total touchdowns. Geno Smith himself put up 19. Second, when he first came to the Jets in 2013, he was put in not in a very good situation. Yes, I know he helped lead the Jets to 8 wins as a rookie, which shouldn't really be unnoticed nor forgotten. But let's look at the receiving core he had when he first came to the Jets in 2013. Stephen Hill, garbage. Jeremy Curley, okay. Santonio Holmes, tremendous talent, but a huge horse's ass. Plus, he was injured a lot during the last 2 years with the team. Tight ends, Kendall Winslow Jr. was a tremendous talent, but he couldn't keep his hormones in check. Jeff Cumberland, I thought, was mediocre as hell, in my opinion. Trying to think here. The offensive line he had was subpar. I mean, his two best offensive linemen was DeBrickashaw Ferguson and the late and great Nick Mangold. Brian Winters was mid. Willie Colon was good. Austin Howard was good, but not great. So our offensive line really wasn't anything to write home about in 2013. His best running back, though, was Chris Ivory, who I think a lot of Jet fans will agree that the dude was the man. He was an awesome running back, especially during his time with New Orleans. And, the Jets didn't really have a good offensive unit when Geno Smith got there, even though some things got somewhat better for him when the Jets brought in Chris Johnson, CJ2K, to complement Chris Ivory in the backfield. They bring in Eric Decker from the Denver Broncos to hopefully to somewhat improve the receiver core, but they also later on the season before the trade deadline trade for Percy Harvin, which I thought at the time was a great idea, but too little too late. Plus, the offensive line still wasn't that good. Brian Winters, mid. Bruno Guacamini, he was alright, but he wasn't great. But here's the damn thing, though. Even though Geno Smith's 2014 season was not very good, he ended up finishing the season with a perfect quarterback. He played his final game of that year, probably the best football as a Jet, right? In week 17 versus the Dolphins, he went 20 for 25, 358, 360 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but he did lose a fumble on a running play against the Dolphins. And 221 of his passing yards went to Eric Decker, and the Jets ended up winning the game 37-24. Right? So there's that. Geno Smith, heading into 2005, obviously after that the Jets move on from Rex Ryan. They get rid of John Idzik, sorry ass. Right? They clean house. Right? They bring in Todd Bowles. They bring in Chan Gare. They bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick to be the mentor and backup to Geno Smith. They bring back Revis and Cromartie, along with Buster Skrine and Marcus Gilchrist, to help solidify the secondary and teach the younger guys how to play the positions. They bring in Kellen Davis to somewhat improve the tight end room. But the number one thing that really made my day as a Jet fan heading into the 2015 season was them trading from the Bears one of my favorite wide receivers of all time growing up in Brandon the Machine Marshall. You guys know I did a video on Brandon Marshall, historic 2015 with the Jets on my channel not too long ago, about a few months ago, maybe even last year even. His 2015 season with the Jets to me is legendary, historic as far as I'm concerned. It was awesome. And when the Jets traded for Brandon Marshall, who I felt is a true number one, who to me was a true number one, is perfect for the Jets to be their true number one receiver. Don't get me wrong, Eric Decker is great, but I always felt he was more of a number 2 than a number 1. But nonetheless, though, the Jets bring in Marshall, and I'm like, okay, You also bring in James Carpenter to help solidify the offensive line, which ended up doing so. The Jets ended up having a pretty damn solid offensive line in 2015. They ended up giving up less than, 30 sacks. They ended up giving up, 24, 25 sacks that year. That was awesome. They released Chris Johnson, which still irritates me to this day, but that's a different story for another time. But Geno Smith was walking into a good situation. The problem with Geno Smith wasn't necessarily his talent, it was his immaturity. Geno Smith was a very immature person with the Jets, and it showed in this ending into his third year, where he got into his argument over one of his teammates over some money and got his jaw broken in the process, and that led to Ryan Fitzpatrick taking over the starting job. Now, obviously, Geno Smith, obviously a lot of Jet fans but Geno Smith was always a talented guy. He could always play. It's just that it comes down to his maturity. And plus, he didn't really have that great of a coaching staff in his first 2 seasons, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. Um, but when he went to Seattle, obviously had a very solid stint with Seattle. Won comeback play of the year in 2022. Had an incredible season, 4,000 plus yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Helped lead the Seahawks to their first playoff appearance in quite some time. Did a damn good job in Seattle. He really did. But the reason why I'm a bit more optimistic about Geno Smith coming back to the Jets, because as far as I'm concerned, he should not be worse than what we had last year, especially when Brady Cook and Justin Fields took over the helm as the starting quarterback for the Jets last year. Listen, Mason Taylor's a talented tight end. I still think he's got some potential. Adonai Mitchell, or A.D. Mitchell, whatever you want to call him, is a tremendous talent. I know a lot of Jet fans see him as a wide receiver 3, more as a wide receiver 2, but he's still damn good he's still got a lot of upside in my opinion. Plus you got Garrett Wilson. Even though Brees is acting like a douche on social media, he's still a tremendous talent. You got Isaiah Davis. You got, hopefully, Brandon Allen comes back healthy. I'm not saying the Jets shouldn't improve their receiving core, which I think they will either in the draft or in free agency. I think more than likely in free agency or the draft that will happen. But with that being said, though, Geno Smith played behind the worst offensive line in football. The worst offensive line in football last year belonged to the Raiders. And even though they brought in one of his teammates, Dylan Parham was supposed to be pretty solid offensive line. Even though he played his ass off for the Raiders last year, the Raiders' offensive line still sucked, and that's pretty bad, right? Even though you're doing your job, everyone else isn't. That's probably gonna make you even more determined to really step up your game. But we shall see. I think the Jets have a better offensive line than what he had with the Raiders. I think the Jets have a better offensive line than when Geno Smith had ahead of him when he was in the league in his first 2 seasons. But we shall see, man. We shall see. Look, I hope in God Geno Smith turns out. I know Geno Smith is 35 years old. He's not the future. Not like when he once was when the Jets drafted him. But the man can play. So, I'm not saying Geno Smith's going to come in and light things up. But I do expect more competence and a more improved veteran leadership from Geno Smith than what we got out of Justin Fields and Brady Cook last year. Because last year, the quarterback play for the Jets was embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. A disgrace, even. Plus, Garrett Wilson, to me, is one of the best receivers the Jets have ever drafted. So I think he's going to have a lot of fun throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson. So we shall see, man. We shall see. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.